If you open up your program that's in your folder, we have the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, which is the prayer by the credit union. We took that as ours. Together, please. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. Where there's despair, hope. Where there's darkness, light. And where there's sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. Thank you so much. Now we're going to call the chairman of the BQ board, Mr. Barry Roll, who will come and bring greetings.
Thank you. Good morning. It's great to see so many of you out here today. That spells one thing. That everybody now is interested in their credit ratings and credit scores and how do we go about obtaining and maintaining a loan. It is my pleasure to be here on such a beautiful morning. The Education Committee of BQ, as many of you may or may not know, is a board-appointed committee that is charged with educating our members on pertinent issues that would directly affect our membership and also the wider community. This financial seminar, the Credit Bureau, how your credit scores impact your future, is very timely, as the introduction of the Credit Bureau will drastically change the way we know credit today. And I don't know how many of you would have, most of you I would think that, because they've been talking about the Credit Bureau coming and the introduction of the Credit Bureau coming here for some time. Everyone in the Bahamas who's looking for a loan when the credit union comes on stream will be impacted. Now this impact can be either good or bad. Based on this backdrop, the Education Committee focuses on one of the BQ's core value, and that is how to improve the quality of life for our members. And we wanted to get ahead of the game and educate you about the impact of the Credit Bureau. Today it is our intentions not only to inform you about the Credit Bureau, but also to help you to understand the importance of your credit scores and how your credit scores now will be related to you obtaining a loan. Additionally, you will receive guidance on how to go about ensuring that you not only get, but also maintain a good credit score. So with that in mind, on behalf of the Board of Directors, I would like to take this time out to commend the Credit Committee on their efforts. Let us all continue to work together to make BQ one of the primary institutions committed to empowering our members. Thank you, enjoy the session, and we hope that when you leave here today, you'll be fully educated about the Credit Bureau and its activities and how it affects you. Thank you.
Mr. Barry Rule, Chairman, and your board members, Mr. Mark Bastian and his absent CEO, and the management and staff of the Bahama Islands Co-operative Credit Union. Good morning.
Good morning.
One of the mandate the Education Committee has committed to execute is to inform or enlighten its members of pertinent issues as it relates to the development and maintenance of their finances. We thought it fit today to inform our members about the credit bureau that's on the horizon. And we are delighted that so many of you have decided to come out this morning to be informed. We have the finance class of UB led by Ms. Robin Thompson. If they are here, please stand so we could recognize you. We also have the business class of C.C. Sweeting School. If you're here, please stand as well so that we could recognize you. We have Mr. Wilford Miller, Business Development Manager at the League. Thank you. We also have members of the Teachers Cooperative Credit Union League as well. If you'll stand so we could warmly recognize you as well. Thank you. So we are now all familiarized and we are delighted. It's my esteemed pleasure to invite Ms. Finesse Ramming to introduce our speaker. Forgive me. We'll now ask Ms. King, Michelle King, to introduce our keynote speaker.
Good morning, everyone. Our keynote speaker has a wealth of experience from over 20 years of employment in the Bank Supervision Department, Central Bank of the Bahamas. Her career with Central Bank has evolved over time with a series of promotions offering new opportunities, challenges, and exposure. She has headed a couple of the operating units within the department, namely the policy unit, and she was instrumental in the creation of the authorization unit in 2009. Currently, our speaker holds the post of Deputy Inspector of Banks and Trust Companies, making her the first Bahamian to ascend to this newly created role in 2018. In her current role, she provides leadership and technical support in the running of the department in consultation with the Inspector of Banks and Trust Companies. Additionally, she shares the portfolio for public engagement with public official industry, stakeholders, foreign regulators, and other international agencies on pertinent matters impacting the financial sector. Our keynote speaker currently serves on several of the internal committees within the Central Bank, such as Monetary Policy Committee, the Policy Advisory Committee, and the IT Modernization Steering Committee. She's also a member of the Deposit Insurance Board and has represented the Central Bank in many local and global forums in various meetings and technical working groups. Most recently, she was appointed to serve on the Alliance for Financial Inclusion, Global Standards Proportionality Working Group, as well as the incoming chair for the Caribbean Group of Banking Supervisors. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand to your feet and by a round of applause, help me welcome our keynote speaker, Miss Karen Rhodes.
Wow, she made me feel very special. I've spoken to in several forums, as she mentioned, and nobody told anybody to stand to their feet to receive me. Thank you. So, good morning. So we're here this morning to talk about a very, very exciting topic. And I am delighted that BICU, in fact, you are the first credit union, and I dare say the first financial institution that has invited the central bank to speak on this topic. So it tells me that I'm dealing with a very progressive organization this morning. And I'm also very delighted to see so many young people here, because this is a very, I listened to the chairman, Mr. Rule, and as he mentioned, this is a very important topic that will impact you, in fact, impact all of us. And so it's good when you get an early start in terms of how do you prepare yourself for the credit bureau, and how does the credit bureau and things like credit scoring can impact your financial future. So I think it's a very timely topic indeed. I did have a PowerPoint presentation, but I'll speak to my slides, and certainly to the extent any of you wish to have access, I've shared them with Ms. Morse, and so she could certainly share it with you if you so care to have them. So I'll open up and I'll ask you, because I want this to be interactive. We're out here on a Saturday morning, and whereas we could be doing a whole lot of other things. And so I don't just want you to talk, I don't just want to talk to you, I also want you to talk to me. So now, Mr. Burrell, you don't get a chance to answer my question. I think you have a fair understanding of the topic. Can anybody tell me what is a credit bureau? Anybody have an idea? What is a credit bureau? And please don't look at the handout, please.
Credit bureau.
Go ahead.
I think it's a
Yes.
credit bureau. A credit bureau would be an agency responsible for assessing the credit of persons to see their net worth.
Okay. Good answer. Good answer. Anybody else have any thoughts about what a credit bureau is? Okay, well, I'll accept that. That's pretty much on target. And so, essentially, a credit bureau is simply a company that collects information from lenders and other sources about a consumer's borrowing and bill paying history. How many of you ever heard about a credit bureau? Or heard about credit reporting or credit scores? So you have a kind of understanding, you kind of have a sense of what that means and what that is all about. So typically a person's credit history, I think I have one right there. Typically a person's credit history is compiled in what is called a credit report. And I'll talk a little bit about the credit report in a moment. Credit reports are used by prospective lenders and other users, even employers, to help assess a credit worthiness of a customer or a consumer. And the credit report simply says how likely is this person's ability to repay the loan or make payments when they become due. And of course, a credit report can impact the interest rate and other terms of the loan that is offered to a consumer. A credit bureau can also offer other value-added services such as credit scoring, portfolio monitoring, and fraud alert. A credit bureau may charge fees for credit reports and other value-added products. Certainly there's no charge for investigating disputes or correcting disputed information. So I sum the broad objectives for having a credit bureau in the Bahamas. I summed it up in two broad objectives. Firstly, it supports the government's ease of doing business objectives related to access to credit. Thank you very much. And then secondly, it supports the central bank's financial stability objectives and economic growth. And I'll talk through that during the course of my presentation, what that really means, what those two broad objectives really means. And so I asked the question, why do we need a credit bureau? And I'll answer by saying presently lenders are not able to accurately assess the creditworthiness of potential clients. And this is due primarily that lenders really don't have a comprehensive information regime in terms of a person's outstanding debt obligations. And so essentially, in our current setup, a person can go to, and I'll use banks just as an example. They could go to Royal Bank and they could borrow. Then they could come to BQ if they're a member and they can borrow. And then they could go to Furniture Plus and get furniture on credit. And there are a myriad of different places that they can go, and it's really the person being upfront and forthcoming in terms of their credit history and their credit worthiness, that sometimes, you know, help to inform the lender's decision to whether that person should have access or that person have. Now normally, one of our banks they've made actually a model out of it. A lot of banks like to have what you call salary deductions. And so when they ask for you to bring in your salary pay slip, they're able to see, okay, this person has a deduction that's going to Royal, this person has a deduction that's going to Commonwealth, this person has a deduction that's going to Furniture Plus, and so that helps. But that's not every company offers salary deductions. And so what does that mean? A lot of times that makes it very difficult for persons to have access to credit, and particularly for young people who don't even have a credit history in some cases. Banks become, and maybe even in some cases credit unions become very skeptical about whether to lend or afford that individual credit. And so, to sum it all up, the challenges that the current system poses, it can lead to consumers taking on too much debt given their income and level of assets, because there isn't a consolidated view, place that we can look at this information to see this person's credit worthiness. If customers are unable to service debts, then repossessions and foreclosures can occur, right? And then financial institutions will be adversely affected if significant number of clients are unable to meet their debt obligations. Because now they have loaned out monies and they're not now able to recoup those funds that they loaned out, as well as the interest that is the revenue stream for them. And so instead of them generating revenue, they could be potentially generating losses, because now they have to write off loans. And so you see that it has a kind of ricocheting domino effect. And I will tell you, I have a very wonderful slide here on the domestic lending, and it actually shows a graph from 2007 to 2018 to show the spikes in terms of total arrears in the Bahamas. And at 2007, when I say total arrears, what do you think I mean? What am I referring to? Yes. And so in 2007, total arrears was around, it was like about 500 million. And at the highest point after the global financial crisis in 2008, total arrears at its highest point in 2013 had reached 1.2 billion, right? And what that was is that you had a whole lot of people who were unable to repay their loans, repay their debts. Anybody can tell me what they think would have triggered this kind of outcome post the crisis? in 2000, anybody have an idea what factor could have triggered that? Loss of jobs. Loss of jobs. And so you would have seen the unemployment rate also moving up almost in parallel with respect to the spike in non-performing loans. Also, you saw the unemployment rate also rising. And so we're still at what we call a very elevated level. But we are certainly much better than where we were, say, 2013. We're now where the total arrears in the system is over 600 million. So it's gone down from the high of 1.2 billion. And then also we see that the unemployment, the rate of unemployment has also trended down, although it still remains in double digits. So there's still a lot of improvement in terms of economic recovery, but certainly it's showing a more positive trend compared to previous years. And I say all that to say, all of this has impacted the need to have a credit bureau to be able to assess the true credit worthiness of individuals. Because without that information, you can begin to see the macro impact to the economy. So there are, I would say, 5 typical participants in a credit reporting system. And I will name you broadly those 5 participants. You have, firstly, the credit reporting service provider. Then you have what we call data providers. These are people who actually send information into the credit bureau. Then you have data subjects. These are the people who data or information is being reported to the credit bureau on. And then you have users of that information. And then at the nucleus of that system is the authorities or the regulator, which is the central bank. And so in terms of data providers, anybody could guess, I've probably given you one already. Anybody could guess who would typically be some of the providers of data to the credit bureau? Banks.
Insurance companies.
Insurance companies. Well, I mean, business. What type of businesses though? Utilities. National insurance. Possibly, yes. National insurance. Possibly. How about credit unions? So, credit unions, money lenders, leasing companies, credit card issuers, collection agencies, retailers, and public registries. So, and even I think somebody mentioned utility companies, right? Yes. So, all of these are typically types of data providers to the credit union. Never thought your light bill and water bill would be factored in your credit worthiness, right? And so, now give me some examples of users. Who would typically be users? Who do you think would want to know this information? Banks? Landlords. Yes, landlords. So basically, yes, somebody said some of the same names that we've already called, but yes, and the young lady there said landlords, certainly employers, and possibly even other consumers. So in terms of the kinds of information that's on a credit report, it would provide your identity information, such as your name, your national insurance number, your date of birth, your current and previous address, your telephone number, your current and previous employer. In terms of credit information, it provides your different types of accounts, the date that it was opened, the limits, the outstanding balances, and timelines of payments. And when I talk about accounts, I'm talking more about your credit-related accounts, not necessarily your deposits. In terms of public records, the credit report would provide if somebody has been bankrupt, if there are any tax liens or judgments on an individual. And in terms of inquiries, it would also indicate any inquiries authorized by the consumer. So that would be typically the kinds of information that a credit report could present. In terms of other value-added services that could be offered by the credit bureau, we talked about the credit score, and that's basically a numeric number based on information in line with the credit file, and it shows how likely you are, the person or the consumer is able to repay a loan. And the higher the score, the less risk you represent. Then you have other services such as portfolio monitoring. It tracks how a borrower is maintaining loan obligations. And also you have things like fraud alert, and it could also track any unusual activity on a borrower's credit arrangements. And typically you would probably see this in terms of credit cards, right? Yeah. So in terms of, there are some general principles with respect to credit reporting. So the first one relates to data. And so we expect that the credit bureau should have accurate, timely, and sufficient data, including positive and negative data, collected on a systematic basis from all relevant and available sources. And it should be maintained for a sufficient amount of time. Also, we expect security around that data. And so the credit bureau should have a rigorous standards of security, reliability, and efficiency as it relates to the security environment that undergirds their data repository. We also expect proper governance, and so arrangements should ensure accountability, transparency, and effectiveness in managing risk and the fair access to information by users. Certainly there must be a legal and regulatory environment, and such an environment should be clear, predictable, non-discriminatory, proportionate, and supportive of data subjects and consumer rights, and should include effective judicial dispute resolution mechanisms. And in terms of cross-border, data transfers should be facilitated where appropriate, provided that adequate requirements are in place. And I'll talk a little bit about the setup for the current credit bureau. Currently, we have an application for a credit bureau that's and we're very much at the tail end of the application vetting process. This credit bureau project started way back 2014, and last year we had what we call an RFP process where we invited proposals from international as well as national stakeholders who could present us with, a reasonable proposal in setting up a credit bureau in the Bahamas. And we received, I think it was some 4 proposals, and those proposals were then shortlisted. There was a committee that shortlisted the proposals to 3, so 3 were a part of the shortlisted process. And in December of last year, the selection committee would have made a recommendation to the governor with respect to a suitable candidate to present itself to be licensed for a credit bureau in the Bahamas. And so the applicant was named in December last year, and it is an Italian-based company under the name of CRIF, C-R-I-F, S-P-A. And this particular company this is their fundamental business. They have operations in several jurisdictions in all across, the Western and hemisphere, as well as Europe and Africa. In terms of the Caribbean region, this particular company already operates in Jamaica, and it has set up what is called, and I will talk a bit more about this, its regional hub in Jamaica. And because it's set up its regional hub in Jamaica, any other credit bureau that will be for the Caribbean region will be a spoke. And so all that simply means is that all of the necessary infrastructure, particularly with respect to the data hosting and the platforms, all of that investment, they would not want. It's very expensive, as you could imagine, to replicate that in each jurisdiction. And so their intent is to have one hub in Jamaica, and every other country will be a spoke. And so in that regard, the data for the Bahamas Credit Bureau will be hosted from Jamaica. So you would have the front end platforms here where the data providers would interface and submit information, and you will have a local office and staff here. But in terms of the data, the data being stored, it will be done from Jamaica. And so when we talk about cross-border, and our legislation allows for our data to be cross-border, but there must be certain safeguards around that. So one of the things, so we talked a bit about the reason why we needed a credit bureau, and one of the things, a strong case for the credit bureau is that borrowers know the odds of repaying their debt much more than lenders, and of course this can lead to adverse and moral hazard, giving loans to debtors who are most likely to produce undesirable outcomes, and having debtors into contracts with no intention of honoring them. And so the credit bureau provides better knowledge of borrowers, characteristics leads to safer lending and lower defaults. And so it's hoped that with lenders having this more comprehensive view, that we won't see those spikes in NPLs. Now, it doesn't mean you could have something that that creates a total crisis situation. I mean, we had Dorian the other day, and that impacts unemployment and impacts a person's financial capabilities. But we're talking about in the ordinary course that we would hope to see that better credit decisions are being rendered from the information from the credit bureau. It promotes healthy credit culture, and it eliminates the incentive to overborrow. Lenders are better able to price for risk. And it contains the potential adverse financial and economic effects of high levels of bad debt. I particularly like that one, lenders are able to price for risk. What do you think that means? Anybody want to give a stab at what they think that means? Yes. Yes. And so we're hoping that with the credit bureau coming on stream, that banks will appropriately apply a risk charging system on, as well as credit unions and other lenders, that they would apply risk-based interest rate based on the level of risk. So if you are a borrower that's very, conservative in your borrowing, you have good repayment habits, your payments are never overdue, and you always pay. You don't short them. You say, sometimes people have this tendency, you got to take from Peter, and I can't pay them $500 this month. They can get $350 from me. It's like I put this $150 on the light bill. Yeah. Amen. So it happens. Yeah. But now you have this credit report that will capture things like that. So you can't short your payment. If you're supposed to pay the $500, you got to pay the $500, right? And so we're hoping that with the credit bureau, that when lenders see that a person fits a particular good credit profile, that I'm not going to charge you 9% interest rate. 18% interest rate. And so you're able to negotiate, right? Negotiate a good rate. And so we started, that's a good segue in terms of talking about the benefits to borrowers and lenders. So for borrowers, some of the key benefits, borrowers are motivated to improve credit and payment behavior. Borrowers, it also helps them having faster credit decisions. A bank shouldn't take, I don't know how many months now. There was a time ago you could have get loan in a day. Does that still happen? No. Yes? At the credit union. At the credit union. Good for the credit union. Good for the credit union. Yeah. So so it's an unfortunate situation that we're in today. You don't get fast credit decisions, but we're hoping now that banks have and credit unions and other lenders have this information. The credit adjudication process will be much faster in rendering the decision. It protects consumers against problems of over-indebtedness. So you're protecting yourself from yourself, essentially. Yes. Don't go and borrow for that vacation or that new piece of furniture, or you don't need it. It causes you to reevaluate, do I really need this, right? Or what one of the things I find so interesting, you go and I noticed this has been a recent pattern with the banks. You go to the teller, to pay a bill or deposit monies, and the teller now, can we offer any more products to you? Are you interested in a credit card? That you've had that happen to you? Yes. No, I did not come here for a credit card. I do not need a credit card. So it causes you to make those kinds of decisions. Typically when things are just being offered to you, you feel like, okay, you just sign up here and you can get this credit card in a matter of days or instantly. And you don't be thinking about annual fees and all of that. You're just thinking, boy, I want it to go away, I need this little credit card coming good, right? And you go on in there And then you put yourself in a whole bill that you didn't need to have. And so, but with your credit report will keep you mindful. Do I really need to cause my score? My score is now 850. I don't need this to go down to 650, right? It causes you to make those kinds of distinctions. And again, we're hoping that again, and I'll repeat it, that borrowers will be rewarded through lower collateral requirements and lower interest rates. So a bank sees or lender sees that you're able to pay. You don't have to go bring all your land papers to borrow $5,000. You know? So and so these are some of the benefits that we see that borrowers will experience. Now, so on the lending side, on the BICU side, what are the benefits? Well, better assessments of true creditworthiness, streamlined credit decision-making process, right? Lower exposure to risky loans, which could curtail operational costs and less demands on capital. And certainly, their ability to offer risk-based pricing to customers. And when a lender is able to offer risk-based pricing to customers, what do you think happens? What do you think happens? If you know that you're a good borrower and you have good credit worthiness, and this lender or BICU is gonna charge you 5% interest rate, while the banks want to charge you 8%. Where are you coming to borrow this money?
Yeah, the 5%.
You're going to wear the 5%, right? And so it allows lenders to operate on an even playing field, because now we all have access to the same information, and we can adjust lending rates so that we can attract the quality borrowers. Now there are some lenders who make a market of lending to the high risk borrowers now, you know. Because ain't everybody can fit that profile. We might as well be honest. Ain't everybody gonna be that, you know, that conscientious borrower with a very good credit history. So it doesn't mean that we don't want the others to have access to credit. But what do you think can happen to them?
It's a cost to the risk. There's a cost to the risk.
There's a cost to the risk. Now you think that you is gonna offer that same 5%? If you say, no, I think, you know, we need to double this rate for you. You know? And when we see this pattern of, you know, you get to the place where you're a pattern of repayment and honoring your obligations, then, you know, over time, that could be adjusted. But certainly, the lenders will be better able to adjust and price, use a risk-based system to price their customers. Okay. So there were two pieces of legislative framework that were passed to bring into reality a credit bureau in the Bahamas. We have the Credit Reporting Act 2018, which came into force on the 26th of March 2018. And that's important, and I can tell you in a minute why that is important. And we had the Credit Reporting Regulations 2018, which was gazetted in February of 2019. So remember that date what I told you, right? The Credit Reporting Act came into force March 2018, right? 26, yeah, 26, 2018. I'm going to get to why that's an important date for you. So the Credit Reporting Act sets out the activities that the Credit Bureau may engage in. The Act says the Credit Bureau could collect, store, manage, evaluate, update, and disseminate data. Disseminate data, subject information. It could issue credit reports for permissible purposes. It could carry out market and statistical research, and it also could develop and provide value-added products. And in terms of issuing credit reports for permissible purposes, The permissible purposes underlying the use of a consumer data collected are data, credit reports for permissible purposes could be issued for consideration of an application for credit, offer to act as a guarantor for a credit applicant. Also, a credit report could be issued in connection with the purchase or collection of a debt, a new or renewal of a tenancy agreement. Somebody mentioned landlord earlier. The underwriting of insurance involving the consumer. It also could be issued in connection with a business or credit transaction involving a customer, a consumer. It also could be issued as a part of an employment assessment. It could be issued for periodic portfolio monitoring and risk assessment purposes, collection and skip tracing, and for any other permissible purpose as the central bank may from time to time specify by regulations, and also it could be issued in response to a court order. So, other requirements that are imposed on the credit bureau. Credit bureau must capture positive and negative information. Anybody want to take a crack at what they think that means? What do you think is negative information? Defaults, certainly. Late payments, certainly. Yeah, and so typically they would perhaps be the main two. Even if you also, you're being sued. So the credit bureau must capture positive. So that it's not just going to capture that you're paying the bills on time and paying the loans. It's also going to capture if you're not paying the bills on time and you're late and partial payments and all of that. The bureau is prohibited from collecting information on race, creed, color, medical information, ancestry, ethnic origin, or political affiliation. Data must be current, authentic, legitimate, reliable, accurate, and comprehensive. Bureau must ensure data management and quality control. The Bureau must institute adequate security and control measures, including the use of a subscriber agreements. And very important point here, credit information cannot be disclosed for longer than 5 years. Isn't that side relief? You had a little problem 5 years ago. You don't want that to be hanging over your head for the rest of your life, right? So the credit information cannot be disclosed for longer than 5 years after a loan has been settled or terminated. Right? I think that's a good news there. Generally, the credit bureau will not be able to include in a credit report any information about a borrower's credit history that relates to loans that the borrower would have gotten before the Credit Reporting Act came into effect. When did the act come into effect? I tell you, that's an important date, right? So, because I'm telling you, it's a clean start. And so, oh yes, that's an important point.
From the collection department, it's not a clean start. Don't even let I don't care what you do.
And I agree, Mr. Collections Officer, that if you have a loan, it does not mean you must not pay a loan. It just means that everything that you've done prior to March 2018, in terms of, you may have had defaults, all of that, that would not be captured. But to the extent anything after the post-start date, so if you start paying today, it goes into the bureau. All right, so your window of opportunity finished. I don't want to upset Mr. Collections Officer. All right? But there's an exception. The only exception is that the credit bureau may share information about judgments against the borrower, but only if the judgment creditor confirms in writing that the judgment debt remains outstanding in whole or in part, and the confirmation is retained by the credit bureau in the borrower's credit file. The confirmation is also required to set out the amount of the judgment, the date of the judgment, the name, and if available, the address of the judgment creditor or the agent of the judgment creditor at the date of entry of the judgment. So if somebody's suing you, credit is suing you, that happened prior to, and it's still outstanding, that information could be sent to the credit bureau. So in the legislation, credit information providers, the mandatory credit information providers are certainly banks, insurance companies, financial and corporate service providers, which fall within the definition of a credit provider, credit unions, the Bahamas Mortgage Corporation, the Bahamas Development Bank, and any other person the central bank may designate if considered in the best interest of the public. So they are the mandatory credit information providers. And by regulation, the central bank will include licensees of the Utilities Regulation and Competition Authority. And so that is certainly a utilities company, it's like the BPL and Cable Bahamas and the like. Public utilities, such as water and sewage, Bahamas Electricity, well, BPL, hire purchase entities, public registers such as the Supreme Court, National Insurance Board, as well as any other company. So they would be named by regulation. So a little while ago we talked about the kinds of information that's shared. We talked about the information being both positive and negative in order to have a comprehensive credit profile. And so types of negative information would be late payments, arrears, defaults, outstanding adverse court judgments, bankruptcies, debt write-offs. And in terms of positive information, account balances, types, limits, total amount, types of loans, credit card, commitments, monthly utilizations, monthly repayments, cash withdrawals, changes to borrowing limits, guarantees, nature of collateral, and debt write-offs. And there are a couple of points to be mindful of. The negative information will not fully cover the risk. It does provide a more informed view, but it never could fully, cover all of the risks that a potential lender or consumer, could be, the kind of exposure that person could present. And in terms of positive, without positive information, lenders will have no idea of the number of loans a consumer may have. Now, a very important point in terms of permissible uses. The consumer consent is necessary for accessing information from the credit bureau. So nobody could just automatically get your information. You have to give consent. But what happens if you don't give consent? What do you think will happen? If I were a lender, I think that would be a red flag. That's a red flag if you, yes. So that's a very important point to note. That consumer consent is necessary for accessing information from the credit bureau, except where a court order is issued. So the permissible uses for credit information. So information, a person's credit information could be used for a credit application, for them also to offer to act as a guarantor for a credit applicant, to purchase or collection of a debt, for new or renewal of a tenancy agreement, for assessing applications for insurance, business or credit transactions involving a consumer, employment assessment, periodic portfolio monitoring and risk assessment, and any other permissible purpose as may be specified by the central bank or court order. So people or a company cannot just willy-nilly have access to your credit information for their own satisfaction. You know, they want to know your stuff. They want to know your affairs. No, that's not a permissible use of a person's credit information.
So, question.
Yes.
So, credit bureau and information of this sort is obviously personal information.
Yep.
Which also can be a big business, sharing this information. What's the plan to what is the plan to protect that information for us, the consumers?
To protect the...
Okay, so the information that the credit bureau is... Good morning, sorry, my apologies. Good morning. The information that the credit bureau is collecting is very personal information for us as the consumers. We also know that this information can be shared, and as actually for some retailers, it's a big business.
Yes.
To gather this type of information. What is the credit bureau doing to protect us? Because in a situation like this, social media and media handles and all of that other good stuff, this information can quickly get out.
Yeah.
What is the credit bureau doing to protect us as the consumers?
Okay, so my very next slide really speaks about consumer rights, right? And so consumers will have the right to know what information is on them. Firstly, you have a right to know what's there. So it should not be something that's totally foreign to you. What is being held by the Bureau and what is being held by the Bureau on them. Also, the consumer should have access to credit reports free of charge in the following instance. You get one free credit report each year upon request, right? And in any case where a credit bureau has corrected credit or personal information related to the consumer, they need to make you aware of that. So you get a free credit report. And where a consumer has been denied credit, you also need to be made aware of that and have access to that. Access to credit report in all other instances will be for a fee. Dispute the accuracy of information produced in a credit report and have information held by the credit bureau that may be perceived to be inaccurate, misleading, incomplete, or out of date, corrected in a timely manner. So there is a formal dispute process. If a consumer feels as though that they're being treated unfairly or information related to them is inaccurate, and you also must remember that the data in the credit bureau is also subject to data privacy laws as well. So again, nobody can have your data without you first giving them permission to have that data, right? And to the extent that and the Act very clearly states what that data could be used for. And if there's misuse of that data, certainly there is legislative penalties involved with the misuse of data related to a subject. So you have to also be very, very careful that you're comfortable with whom you are actually allowing access in terms of your information.
Just give us a practical example of how give them information.
That's fine, right.
Just ask.
Turn it off.
Yes, I was just asking if you can give us a practical example as how one would give that information. Because sometimes persons would be asked a question but don't know that they're actually giving that right for information to be disseminated otherwise.
Okay, so with respect to the act, in terms of the permission, I'm sure that, and it's hard to give a practical example given that we haven't reached that stage as yet where the credit bureau is actually in effect. But there will be appropriate documentation or record, record supporting the fact that you have actually given the consent. Okay, and so that consent, whether it's some electronic document or hard copy document that you could submit to the bureau, but there has to be some official mechanism that shows that you, the consumer, has given consent to the data requester to have access to your data.
Morning, everyone. Morning. Oh, my milk big. Okay. Question. I understand the entire concept of the control being delegated internationally to the credit bureau and so forth, and the central bank and all of the laws and policies in coordinates with the Commonwealth of Bahamas. My question is, seeing how, and I'm going to put this in layman's terms, this is the Carfax for a human being, show me the Carfax, in terms of their financial status. Will there be a situation where it's just the credit bureau who is going through the whole process of doing all the reporting, or you're going to have sub-companies who are legally licensed to act on behalf of the credit bureau? So if I want to go to the bank and I want a credit card loan, so forth, whatever it is that I intend on investing myself financially into, I can say to them, well, you have to go to HDR Holdings, that's who I'm registered with, in terms of my financial reporting. Will they have sub-companies, or is just strictly the credit bureau controlling all of this information? So I'll have to go to the credit bureau in terms of everything. Everyone who wants any information on anyone has to go through the credit bureau.
Okay, that's a good question. Yes, so in terms of the setup, the operational setup, there will be one credit bureau that has a license by the central bank that is permitted to receive information on data subjects and also to be able to send out information relative to data subjects. They cannot have any person or entity acting as an agent on their behalf. Okay? So the credit bureau itself will be subject to reporting requirements to the central bank, as well as on-site examinations by the central bank. So it'll be treated as if it was a bank or a credit union that undergo supervisory monitoring. So there will be no agency setups, no.
So solicitation, how do we stop that? And I want to get back to the point, the one word I did not use was solicitation. We're going to one centralized location and all of this data now is readily available. So we've now opened ourselves up to more of this telemarketing type deal that can happen now, and we're seeing it become a little bit more prominent in the Bahamas. What is this credit bureau doing to impede that and mitigate us from going through all of this?
Okay, well, the thing of it is that companies that choose to use telemarketing as a way to, for market penetration and to, to be able to access and have greater market share, that falls outside of the purview of the credit bureau. Those companies will not have access to your information to target you personally. Now, I know that, for instance, and I'm sure many of you are subject to it too, via emails that you get all of these kinds of solicitations with respect to different, things, whether it's travel, hotel, products, and you haven't put any information out there. Well, I'm sure that wouldn't stop, but that certainly would not be influenced by the credit bureau, because persons will not have that. They can't go to the credit bureau and purchase data to promote themselves, or promote their services or products. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. What role could a non-disclosure agreement serve to protect the consumer? Or is it applicable?
Well, I think basically within the act, given that the act specifies explicitly the purposes for which a credit information or credit report should be used, the act, there's almost this kind of explicit non-disclosure. So yes, the credit bureau could disclose only by consent, but on the basis of that consent to a particular credit information requester, that information could only be used for the purpose for which they requested that information for. So, like for instance, if
Is it expressed or implied?
no, it's expressed that yes, it can only be used for the purpose for which the information was requested for. So a person can't, I guess a good example, because you tend to have more controls when you're dealing with banks and credit unions and more, corporate entities. But I guess where it kind of get a little bit loosey is perhaps if you're dealing with, say, a landlord, or maybe certain employers who may requested your credit report or your credit file. They under the law, they can only use it to access your credit worthiness to have access to a rental agreement or rental contract with them, or an employment opportunity with them. They can't use that information for no other purpose, and they can't disclose that information to any other person.
Quick question. From a control point of view, how does central bank control who has access? How do you know that I am this person's landlord if I want to get information, or potential landlord if I want to get information on their rating? How do you control, how do you make sure that that is actually the case and that you're not releasing this information to just somebody who's interested?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, the central bank, the central bank, in terms of our supervision, what we would examine the fact that you're getting the information, you're getting authentic, correct information relative to the consumers, and to the extent that this information is being disseminated, that you've gotten the appropriate, authenticated permission of that individual.
Okay.
You see? Okay. So it's all tied back to that individual giving the consent for some party to have access to the information.
Okay. So
now we wouldn't validate the validity of that landlord identity. Yeah. But I like that. So there's a certain level of due diligence that the consumer must also display in terms of who have. I mean, like, you don't just, well, you don't have bank books anymore, but when we start bank books or bank statements, you never just get handed and give it to anybody, right? No. You're very, very skeptical and protective of who saw your bank book balance, right? Or who saw your bank statement balances. And so you have to treat the credit report just the same. Just the same. You become very, very protective as to who have access. And it has to be for a valid and legitimate reason that they have this access.
I just need to know, When will this credit bureau come on to maybe the fair already?
One second. I think the bad face went there. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Just two questions. When will this credit bureau come on stream? And will it be mandatory for all citizenry or those just working, business persons, whomever, that they would be a mandatory participant in this institution?
Sorry, let me get the last question.
Would the participation in the bureau be mandatory for all citizenry, or whether it's just working person, business person, or is it something that you can volunteer for?
Okay. So in terms of when the credit bureau, that is one of my latest slides. In terms of when the credit bureau comes on stream, we're right now to the very near to issuing the license. I'm sure that the license will be issued before the end of this year. And once the license is issued, the credit bureau has 12 months. So we're looking to have the operational setup of the credit bureau run a span of 12 months. And during that span of 12 months, the credit bureau will also be engaging with data providers in terms of their ability to submit data to the credit bureau. Because for them, it may mean some IT configuration. And I will tell you, based on experience, just the credit bureau has said to us, it'll take 12 months. But based on experience, it tends to be a bit more protracted, and it's not at the fault of the credit bureau. It's just that different credit data providers are at different levels in terms of the robustness of their systems and their ability to, can have it aligned with the credit bureau going platform. So we're looking at 12, and we're looking maybe from 18 to 24 months in terms of the first credit report to be issued. And so you asked about whether the ordinary citizens have, can have the right to opt in or out of being a part of the credit bureau. But it's really not your decision. It's really the law has made, as in one of my earlier slides, has made it mandatory for certain credit lenders to be a part of the credit bureau. So your banks and your credit unions, insurance companies, and the like, they're the ones who have your data. And they will be the ones who will be pushing that data into the credit bureau. So it's now what you have the right is to have access. So that still resides with you, the consumer. But in terms of whether your information gets to the credit, once you are a client or consumer that has lending obligations with the mandatory entities, all those that we have designated by regulation, your information will be sent to the credit bureau.
Sorry.
Question. With there being one central credit bureau who is responsible for providing all of this information, now we know we're a small country and we borrowing all the time. So will there be a scenario where it backs up and perhaps your loan takes longer to get because it takes the credit bureau that long to get your report in?
Yeah. No. And I will tell you the amount of computing power that will undergird this is significant. That's why I spoke about having the hub and spoke model, and the fact that the hub will be in Jamaica, and anything that's electronically available tends to take is a quick access, right? So there won't, unless there is some issues with respect to their systems. And a part of what we will be doing as the central bank in terms of our supervisory monitoring is having a keen sense of what are their business continuity arrangements. So if something goes down, we don't want the Bahamas to be disadvantaged or consumers to be disadvantaged because some system goes, what is your backup? Right?
And your backup to your backup.
And backup to your backup, exactly. So that is something that we will be concerned with
as the regulator, that you don't run into those challenges.
Things like that. Does that help build towards that history before they actually reach that point of where they are at lending status? Does that positively affect them if they are building a savings things like that?
Well, certainly it helps them to develop that level of discipline as it relates to savings. And I'm sure, I'm not fully familiar with, I think there's a junior program. And I'm sure, and certainly the mere fact that you were able to pull many of them out here today, you're teaching them about savings, you're teaching them about borrowing and how to manage money and manage their finances. And so what you will have is a generation of more informed borrowers, more informed consumers that will enter the real world or the working world where they began to take on loans and mortgages, and them having that level of discipline and understanding the importance of being able to meet their obligations in a timely manner, right? And so it's very, very important for them, and I think programs such as this helps that understanding, helps that learning. So when they get to that point that, they fully aware of what, because you find, and I'll tell you, what's important, particularly for students. I know a lot of students, they have what you call student loans. And what happens, I see that the ministry keeps threatening about pursuing students whom they have lent monies to go to school and educate themselves and come back and get this nice high-paying job, and now they no longer want to pay the government back the money. So it's very important that students understand at the time when you would have signed up for those loans, where you made a promise to repay at some point in the future. That also goes towards what could be very harmful to your credit history and credit profile if you do not repay the government back its money, right? So it's important for you to understand that once you've made an obligation, once you've made a promise to repay, that you honor those obligations. And I think certainly programs like this help students to understand how to manage money, and so that they make the right decisions when they start to actually earn a salary. Oh, sorry. Just before you, I think there was a lady in the back.
Right here.
Good morning, everyone. I know you spoke a lot about credit reports.
Yes.
Are scores going to be attached to these reports that would be readily available, versus a person may not have access to the entire report? But if there's a score attached to it, you'd already know, well, if your score is in this range, you got good credit. If your score is in another range, bad credit.
I mean, certainly that is one of the value-added products that the Credit Bureau has indicated that they will be able to introduce. I don't think that it will be an immediate product. What will be immediate is the credit report, and the credit report will show your repayment history. But in terms of credit scores, I know that there is an intention that will be a service that they actually eventually bring on stream, but it may not be an immediate service.
That was the impression I wanted to pose. One would be the rating that would put you in a bad situation, and what would be the rating that put you in a good situation.
Yeah. And I will tell you, my presentation here today really just lays out the foundation in terms of what it is and where we are and what you can expect. There will certainly be, once the Credit Bureau gets licensed and start to set up its operations, there will be more intentional engagement in conjunction with the central bank and the new Credit Bureau to educate consumers. I'm sure that the central bank will partner with the new Credit Bureau in terms of its financial literacy program, where the Credit Bureau itself will be able to be a little bit more direct in terms, particularly with respect to its services, and the things that it will provide to consumers. So continue to listen out for, in terms of how we evolve in terms of more education around the new credit bureau. Go ahead.
As was stated, this is a small country.
Yeah.
And what's the practicality of having one agency do this as opposed to maybe competition in the marketplace for the various portfolios? I mean, because indirectly, and I'm just thinking out the box a little. We're a small country, and there could be room for mischief there in terms of destabilization or the kinds of things in terms of how they can control your economy, because only one source of information is being distributed to the financial institutions.
Yeah. And I do, and that's a very good question. And really, for them to maintain the cost, because remember now, they're only giving you one credit report free, right? And so to the extent you need more credit reports, you would have to purchase those. And for the credit bureau to maintain the cost, they have to look at what is called the critical mass. The Bahamas is a very small country. You have a country like Jamaica that has a population in excess of 1 million people, and they have 5 million, and they have only two credit bureaus. And for us, it's to have more than one credit bureau. It may not be cost effective, essentially, to have more than one. Now, in terms of the credit bureau coming on stream, I understand your point in terms of the accuracy of information and making sure that that the thing is operating in a manner that is sound, and that's where the supervision comes into play, and that's where also the information that they provide on you. It's important. If you get one free credit report, request it, access it. Is it reflecting the correct information? Where the correct information is not being reflected, challenge it, right? And so, and to the extent we start to see, hey, what's happening? That you're getting a number of complaints. We're here as the regulator. If something, if you've made a complaint to the credit bureau, there are certain timelines by which things need to be resolved, and if it's not being resolved, then you as the consumer have the right to come to the central bank. And certainly, it will allow us to engage them in a certain way, or be more targeted in certain things that we need to be focused on as a supervisor based on the level of complaints that we're seeing. So in the short run, I don't know that will be cost effective, because for them to keep the credit report at a cost effective price to the consumer, without having the critical mass, it may be very challenging to have multiple credit bureaus in the Bahamas.
Alright, so I think that it was more so speaking towards the credit bureau potentially just turn into another government institution that has this favoritism in a sense, where it's so small, and then you get familiar with the people there, and because it's a very small country, just like an IPO, I know my cousin there, so I could potentially just send her possibly.
Oh no! Oh, okay.
And that's how I tie into destabilization.
And the credit bureau is certainly a 100% private enterprise, and one of the reasons why the service provider was selected is because they operate in multiple. They're one of the largest worldwide, and they operate in multiple jurisdictions. And so, they're in this business. They know what they're doing, and so there's a certain sense of credibility coming from experience. So I understand. I understand that particular attitude. That somehow could, develop in certain organizations. But or the culture certainly. But I don't foresee that being something that would be passed on to the credit bureau here. I don't foresee that. And like I said, the credit bureau will continue to be closely monitored by the central bank.
Will it be foreign nationals or will it be a mixed
It's an Italian-based company that will be owning the credit bureau here.
They will be employing
yes, there is an intent for them to employ Bahamians, and they perhaps may bring one or two persons who have the experience elsewhere. Because we have no experience locally in terms of running a credit bureau, so there will have to be some leveraging of international resources to assist us to get up to speed. Any other questions?
I have one question.
One more?
All right, so as today, so you were speaking towards mandatory lending institutions, right?
Yeah.
So Omni, Flash Cash, all of those other lending institutions, are they under that mandatory report? Because they lend as well. So would that reflect a true report of the credit score?
Yeah.
People are outside lending to persons, consumers who are not mandatory regulators of the central bank?
Yeah. And so you have credit mandatory data information providers are the ones that I've listed, and you have what we also call the financial corporate service providers. So these are other money lenders. So, like I'll give you an example. Omni is licensed by us to be a money transmission service provider, right? To the extent that it has, a lending arm to it, then that means that they would have to have a separate financial corporate service provider's license by the Securities Commission. And by virtue of them having that license, they are also named as a mandatory data provider. Yeah. Okay, any more questions? March 28, 26 March 2018. Yeah.
So even though they may have more historical
No, not unless, as I mentioned, that it was judgment against you prior to that. That will then be carried, and that's not being settled, then it will be carried. Yeah. Yeah. So, I trust that the information that I've shared has enlightened you a whole lot more about the credit bureau. Why is it important to the Bahamas? What it means for you as a consumer, and the kinds of information that will be provided by data providers, and how that information is to be used, and how it does impact your financial future. And certainly, I would encourage you to read up more. There were some pamphlets that were given out. So to the extent that I haven't answered your question or sufficiently answer your question, please read the pamphlet, review the legislation. And to the extent there was a burning question that that came to your mind well after this presentation, you could always reach me through Carolyn. In terms of whatever further clarity you need. And I've shared my presentation with Ms. Moss that can be made available to you. So there will be more sessions like this as part of a more broader financial literacy and awareness of the credit bureau as we move forward. So I thank you today for expressing interest in this very important initiative for the country, and I trust that what I would have shared would have assisted you becoming more aware of the credit bureau. Thank you. I just want to thank Ms. Roll for a very informative presentation. Thank Ms. Roll for a very informative presentation. I know she sparked a number of questions. And so not only come to me and come to her, but you know, Bahamians have a problem. When we have town meetings, we never go out. Let's go out and let's ask any questions, because this is going to affect us going forward, especially the younger folks. The reason we wanted to have you all come out today is because persons like me on my way out. So I don't really need credit. Okay, I try to pay off my loans, but you all are the ones who are coming up. I'm going to need that credit. And so we want to make sure that you all know what needs to be in place. The good thing is, what is the date that they're starting to collect the information from? March 26, 2018. So when you leave here today, if there was a bill that you were supposed to pay and you didn't pay, March. Quickly and pay that. All of our delinquent customers, come quick, okay? Because we will report it, okay? Thank you so much. Right now, 2 announcements. UB, Ms. Thompson's class, please make sure that you sign the register. Okay, and then we also have with us today Mr. Wellington Miller. He is from the Bahamas Co-operative Insurance League. And what we have, we always have people who talk about, do you have insurance? Do you have death benefits? The league is our insurance arm. And they have a special package for death benefits. It's like $21, I think it's a month or something like that. So he came out today to answer any questions that anyone needs. There's no reason to have to sit up and feel demerit for weeks because we can't afford to bury you. Let's get this insurance coverage today, okay? Now, one other thing, I know we said until 11 o'clock. I know we said that we were leaving here at 11 o'clock. But I would, and I'm compliance, and I'm supposed to make sure we go by rules and regulations and follow all the policies. But this one time, because we have so many young people here and we have another speaker who was supposed to address something to the young persons, we're going to give him the opportunity, please excuse us. We're going to give him the opportunity to give that presentation. So right now we're going to ask Finesse Ramming to come and give the introduction, and he's going to be quick so we can get out of here. Those of you who have to leave, we understand.
Good morning, everyone. Rashad Ritchie is many things. He's a public servant and an entrepreneur, but most of all, a man of God. Mr. Ritchie holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Public Administration. He is the owner and founder of Rich Enterprise. In addition to managing his own business, Mr. Ritchie is responsible for quality control at a prominent ground handling company here in the Bahamas. In his public life, Mr. Ritchie has traveled extensively, representing the Bahamas at many high-level meetings at Commonwealth and the United Nations. Additionally, Mr. Ritchie is a member of the National Youth Advisory Council and the National Advisory Council on Crime. He has served on many business financing committees, most recently, the Be Inspired Grant Committee. Mr. Ritchie is also a devout Anglican and worships at Holy Cross Anglican Church. In his private life, Mr. Ritchie enjoys reading, debating, and helping others in whatever way he can. And how can I forget, Mr. Ritchie is a member of the Great Bahama Islands Co-operative Credit Union. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Rashad Ritchie.
Good morning, everyone. That was a wonderful presentation by Ms. Rule, talking about the Credit Bureau, and I know it was very informative and that you guys got a lot of information, and I hope you take that information and use that information. However, I'm going to share some more information with you that will also help you in addition to the information on the Credit Bureau. It is my pleasure to be here this morning, and of course I would like to thank the Credit Union, especially the Educational Committee, for inviting me here. This seminar truly shows that BQ is our partner to financial freedom. But I am truly delighted to be here to speak to you about money. Who likes to talk about money? Who in here want to make some money? Who wants to be a millionaire? Well, it don't happen overnight. Even with all the prayers and going to church, it still ain't happen overnight. We have some millionaire churches. You might be lucky to open a church and be a millionaire. Money and credit is something that most people don't understand. Even I'm still learning about it. I may know some things, but I don't know all things. But the one thing I do know is that spending recklessly definitely won't help you to get where you need to be. The first thing that one must set is financial goals. How many of you have financial goals? The only thing on your financial list is to be a millionaire, but you don't have real strategic financial goals. Who has real strategic financial goals? You have that? All right then, so I want to talk to you later. You might give me 1 or 2 tips. That's the first thing. You must determine these things, have them written down in a place where you can see them often and be reminded of them on a daily basis. Now, I know many of you must be saying, get real, right? Bills come in from the north, from the south, from the east and the west. How you want me have financial goals? BPL put up the light bill again and can't even keep it on, right? So, yes, this may be so, but you have to control your bills. You have to control what bills are important and what bills are not important. If you lay out your expenses, you know what you are spending, what you are spending it on, and where it's going. All right? It gives you some control, and it gives you a better understanding. And it also answers that important question that you get at the end of every month. Well, where my money gone? Right? Well, you can know where your money gone if you write it out. And so you have to write out your expenses so that you know where your money is going. All right? Now the next half of the control comes from being able to put certain things down. All right? We all have some bad habits, and some of those habits are very expensive habits. Who all have an expensive habit? Anyone? Everybody ain't going up. You have some expensive habits out there. No? All right then. If you have no expensive habits, then you should be in a good position. All right? You have to be able to distinguish between needs and wants. And Ms. Roll touched on this earlier. You have to be able to distinguish between needs and wants. Sometimes after I spend a couple dollars, I sit down for days thinking, was that really necessary? And I just like, I ready to carry this back right now. Was this really necessary? And you have to ask yourself that question. All right? Do I really need a new car? Huh? A part of my business, a part of some of my business ventures is actually selling cars. And I don't drive the most fancy car. I may help some other people get fancy cars, but I don't have one. And why is that? Do I really need a new car? You know, just because you wear a little squeak? If you wear a squeak on the car, get some WD-40 and the squeak gone, right? So that's what you have to ask yourself. Do you really need that new car? All right. Do you really need that new bike? You need that new bike to put in, you spend $400 on the bike, but you don't have $400 in the bike. All right. Do you need to spend $20 a day on lunch? No. Huh? You have to ask yourself these questions. Now, the unfortunate thing in our society is the most expensive things are very costly, and so then your health now comes into question. So if you have to balance your health, then you need to cut down in some other areas so that you can afford that healthy lunch. Whether you can afford it or not, some people just say, man, I'm making money. I heard someone say yesterday, boy, I just get paid, I can help me a good time. I say, oh Lord. I say, come. I had to sit them down, I had to say, come, let me talk to you. You know, I hopefully didn't bust up that check last night. But whether you can afford it or not, some people feel like just because they're making money and they can afford it, that hey, let me just spend it and get it. Alright? But you have to be able to manage and control your expenses. At the end of the day, you still end up in a less favorable financial position. So you have to manage your needs and wants and know when to say no. Now, from a young person's perspective, when you get that new job, young people, and begin to send your money to the bank, direct deposit, and the bank see you have all this money coming in, they can target you for a loan. Ms. Rose spoke to that. Every time I walk in the bank, you want a mortgage? You want a credit card? I'm like, miss, I come in here to put money in here. You want the money? You want me to put the money in here or not? They say, leave me alone. I tell the bank manager, I say, leave me alone, please, ma'am, leave me alone. Every time I come in here, please leave me alone. They will target you for a bank, for a loan. And no matter what that loan may be for, I just had a conversation with someone yesterday and they say, my God, the bank was ready to give me a loan for a car, but not to start their business. My God, that is powerful. And so again, you need to determine, do I really need a loan? What is this loan going to be for? All right. The most important thing is not to get caught up in a bunch of loans. Now, the unfortunate thing is that in order to establish your credit history, you have to first get some credit, or you have to get a loan. But my advice is not to get caught up in a bunch of loans, all right, and ensure that you have money left inside your check at the end of the month, all right? So you have to use loans and debt to your advantage. If you are going to take out a loan, do not take it out for a depreciating commodity, like a car. Don't mind people saying these little Japanese box on the road. Get your Japanese box and have money at the end of the day. All right? So, if you are going to acquire debt or buy or get a loan, you need to get it for something that will generate revenue, that will bring you some money. To break it down, you have to use your debt to your advantage and acquire something that will pay for itself. Now, a lot of people, yeah, everyone want a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, but how about getting that duplex, living in one and then renting the next one? And that's what a lot of people do. So everyone that pays rent, you are actually paying the mortgage for that person who owns that property. And so these are the things that you have to consider. If you are going to take out a mortgage, take it out and ensure that that money will bring you some money. You have to let money work for you. Don't work for money. So this is important, especially when starting out. So some persons are already caught up in debt. So the only thing you can do is manage your debt and try to pay off your debt. But for persons who are not yet in debt, what you need to do is manage that to the best of your ability, manage your money and stay out of debt. And if you are going to get in it, use it for something that will bring you some money. My advice, don't go broke trying to look rich. So you may want that fancy car or house, but those things take money out of your pocket. Don't put money in your pocket. If your goal is to live comfortably, then you may want to get that fancy car or house. But if your goal is financial freedom, then like I say, get your Japanese box, and you put that pedal to the metal until the door and the windows start falling off of that. And then at the end of the day, you will realize, well, I didn't buy a brand new car every 3 years. And so I could actually now afford a car and still have money in the bank. Again, my advice, if you cannot spend it 3 times or 4 times, don't spend it at all. So if something costs $300, don't spend it unless you have 300 times 3. So for example, in the United States, everyone sees those persons with those new cars, but you know what they do? They buy them or lease them, and then they rent them or drive Uber or rent or do an Uber. And so they have money coming in to pay for that car. So again, like I say, if your goal is financial freedom, then invest in that duplex or rental property, all right? So that it pays for itself. And these are just some examples of how you can use debt and loans to your advantage. And you have to know how to use it to your advantage. Money should always be coming in and not always going out. Sometimes you have money always coming out of my pocket again. So what you have to do is find some creative ways to make money. I told someone the other day, I say, you find the most creative ways to spend money. I think you just sit down and say, I wonder how I can spend this money today. No, you have to find creative ways to make money. That's what you have to do. All right? And so it is important because as people, I assume, we are all on the path to financial freedom. We have to find creative ways to make money. Everyone in here has talents. Anyone in here believe in Christianity? You know, the Christians always say, God give everyone a talent or a gift. Then you have to use your gifts and talents to your advantage and use them to make you some money. All right? You may be tired of money going all the time, so that's what you have to do to find ways for money to come in. Use your talents. If you can write, then get paid to write. When I was in university, I used to get paid to write all the time. Everybody wanted a degree, but no one would go to class. say, let me write for you. And I had a hefty fee. In college, I had a $50 a page fee for a research paper. And some of them papers be 10 pages long. That's research. Because I had to do the research too. That's time. Now, post-university, it went up. And I charge $100 a page. And I can write. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I can write. I can get you an A on a paper. But I can get paid for it. And so that's an example. That's one of my talents. And so you may say, yeah, I tired. I tired. I have a 9 to 5. You go home, sleep. No, you wasting time. You want a part of financial freedom. You have a 9 to 5. Then you also need a 6 to 10. And that 6 to 10 could be a second job, or that could be you using your talents to make you money. If you can sing, don't sing for free. Make some money singing. Make some money singing. Whatever you can do, use your talents. Sometimes you may feel as if you don't have a talent. So what do? Acquire a skill. Get a certificate. You have some companies that want to outsource their accounts. And so if you are a professional accountant, or you can do bookkeeping, then get paid to do it. And so, all right. So this requires putting in extra time and extra effort. Sometimes you have to sacrifice sleep. But either way, you want to be a revenue generating machine. You don't want to be like the average Joe, just working to pay bills. So you may start that side business or that side hustle, as we call it sometimes. But you have to create multiple streams of revenue. Don't mind the naysayers, all right? You have some people say, well, money is the root of all evil. Yeah? Well, the church asks for 10% every Sunday. They miss out a word. The love of money is the root of all evil. But money is a necessity. Even if you want to help people, you need money to help people. All right? All right then. And so, be a go-getter. Work that 9 to 5. And then do that contract work. Do that side hustle. Use your talents to make you some money. So in closing, I want to tell you to be encouraged. The road to financial freedom is a long one. It won't happen overnight. All right? You have persons who are millionaires now. They will tell you that at 30 they were broke. And so take your time. But you have to be willing and you have to be disciplined. Don't mind people calling you cheap. People call me cheap all the time. Lord, show me your bank account since I'm so cheap.
We would like to thank you for your presentation today. It was very informative. It was very thought-provoking, and we just want you to know that we appreciate you coming here and sharing this information with us.
Of course, we did Miss Rowe first. We did try to get her out in case it rains, and we let the gentleman get wet. Our presentation will be to Mr. Ritchie. Mr. Ritchie?
On behalf of the credit union and indirectly the person sitting here, we would like to thank you for your informative and charismatic presentation. It was full of common sense tips for life, which I think most of us do appreciate because you broke it down even for the youngest person to understand. So we thank you for taking the time out to come and bless us with some informative information.
Last, we have our vote of thanks.
Good morning, everyone. It's my privilege and pleasure to be the person who will be giving the vote of thanks this morning. Special thanks to you for taking time out this morning. It's a Saturday morning and you found it necessary to enrich yourself to be here to learn more about your finances and the credit union. So we wish to thank all of you, our special guests. But most importantly, we'd like to thank our keynote speaker, Ms. Karen Rowe, for that very informative presentation. Thank you. You gave us lots of tips. So So even moving forward now, as we move about Saturday, you'll bear in mind that there's a credit bureau, and we must take our credit worthiness seriously. So every action that we take is very important to our overall success in life, because we can't live without finance, can we? And special thanks to Mr. Richard Ritchie. Thank you. I'm sure all of us will have enough, we are armed now with enough knowledge that we will be managing our day-to-day. And special thanks to our support from the Teachers and Salary Credit Union, Former Credit Union. The Bahamas Cooperative Credit League Limited. The students who are here today with their teachers from C.C. Sweeting and the College of Bahama. And we thank each of you for being here today. And also Mr. Wellington Miller for making some information available to us. So thank you on behalf of the Educational Committee of the Bahamas Islands Cooperative Credit Union. Thank you for being here today.